Today we're talking about the Venus star point because this week that's what's going on in the sky. And what it is it's bringing us back to 2022. Venus has an 8-year cycle. 2022 is when it started, when Venus was in retrograde in Capricorn. And now we're 4 years into it. In 2026, we're in this moment in the Venus cycle, which is called full Venus. This is the point where we're getting revelations about this cycle that we've been in, the process that we're going through. This happens when Venus comes into a conjunction with the sun. One way that is called superior and one that's inferior. What we need to know now is that these are the developmental phases that we need to go through of a repeating pattern. Because there's 5 points where Venus and the sun make their superior conjunction or full Venus. And there's 5 that match where it's an inferior. So it's when Venus is very, very close to the earth and very, very bright. So the alignment resets our themes of values, attractions, desire, relationship patterns, money and worth, creativity, our self-expression, what we find beautiful, how we enjoy life. Really, that's the Venusian principle. That's part of what she does. In 2022, that's when the seed was planted for this new cycle. And I remember back in 2022 because I made a video. It was when I started my channel, basically. It was one of my first videos. I was talking about the Venus retrograde and how it's 40 days and 40 nights and how there's so much significance for that, and not really thinking that that was the beginning of a really big cycle for Venus. But I remember talking about that as like a Thelma and Louise thing, and a chicken jumped on my shoulder. Oh my God. This chicken is insane. So here we are. Imagine Venus and Pluto, like a version of Thelma and Louise in the 1966 Thunderbird convertible. Brad Pitt. It's not all bad. No, not with Brad Pitt in there in the prime of Brad Pittness. Are you going to stay up there? Okay. I don't know what I was talking about, but, we all got to start somewhere. Funny enough, I looked at Brad Pitt's chart and he has Venus in Capricorn. So you never know. You never know. Anyway, so January 2022 marked the start of this phase and Pluto was tightly involved. So it is an initiation point of pressure around values, something that really needs to be changing over this 8-year period, restructuring commitments, serious reassessment of relationships, work, long-term goals. It's the beginning that required some endurance, some awareness that something is definitely ending. We're going into a whole new version of reality at the end of this period, starting it off with Pluto so deeply. Venus is aligning with the sun in the same degree range. So when it started, it was at 18 degrees of Capricorn, and now we're at 16 degrees Capricorn. So it always moves about 2 degrees backwards within the 8-year cycle. I shouldn't say it's terrible, but it is. Hopefully it still helps. This is where we are right now. Sun is in the way. We cannot see Venus. This is called a superior conjunction. It's full Venus. It's January 2026. This was 2022. We still couldn't see Venus because it was like looking directly into the sun. So even though she was between us and the sun, she would have been in a new moon phase there. That's January of 2022. What we can think about is what has been consistently working since 2022, what initiated at this point, and where are you now in that cycle? This has to be something that requires time, patience, responsibility, long-term planning, the Venetian things that are beautiful. Architecture is what I think about with Venus in Capricorn, like really long-term, high quality, making sure everything is accurate to geometry and symmetry, like a Frank Lloyd Wright house or whatever, something like that, some sort of architecture, which is funny because back to Brad Pitt again. He's really into architecture, Venus and Capricorn. When this one started, it was 18 degrees, and now we're at 16 degrees. And when the next one starts again in 2030, it starts back in their inferior conjunction at 16 degrees again. The 4-year Venus phase, though, is about visible outcomes at this point. We've worked long enough into this 8-year period where we can start seeing some results here. Now, Mars in Capricorn is there at this star point. Remember, I mentioned in 2022, it was Pluto. Pluto was the boss in Capricorn, and now Pluto is in Aquarius, so totally different energy. Right now, this midpoint is with Mars in Capricorn, where they're going to conjoin, which is very, very interesting and pretty rare that they go through their cazimi together with the sun. Mars in Capricorn, it's going to contribute discipline, stamina, execution, and precision. Together, we have desire and action, intention and follow-through, love and power. but it's empowering. That's what I really like about it. It's a momentum to phase us into this year where I've said it before. I really believe we need to have foundations. I know there's a lot going on in the world. I don't normally ever want to talk about that sort of thing because it's easy to get manipulated by the news and manipulated by world events. But you can definitely put two and two together and see these big phases, these big stories are coming through in the world as well. So building, advancing, and completing in the next 4 years has to do with what do we see right now? What have we done so far in this area of our life, of our love, of our creativity? What is Venus really is so important. It's one of the most benefic planets, and it creates this beautiful pattern in the sky. The Fibonacci sequence is built into it. The Fibonacci sequence is the golden ratio, and it's what all plant life on Earth basically follows, that pattern of the Fibonacci sequence, and Venus does as well. A few things to think about is what kind of investment feels right moving forward. That's very Capricorn. What investment do you want to put in at this stage? And what long-term goals do you want to do in the next 4 years after looking at the back end of 2022? Which commitments support your stability and your growth, your creativity, the long term, which is meaningful. You're going to get a meaningful return when you put the effort into these Venusian topics with the Capricornian flavor on top of it. Mars there to bring some stability, support, and going into the light of the sun together as a merged pairing of the divine masculine and feminine, which definitely needs some repair. So our culture is definitely in need of that divine masculine and feminine balance again. If you want to get a look at these Venus 8-year cycles for yourself, you can go to astroseek.com and look up the Venus cycle. They're beautiful, beautiful diagrams that you can observe. You can imagine that the Earth is in the center, the sun is going around in the circle, and Venus is moving back and forth between the Earth and on the other side of the sun. So it kind of gives you a visual, once you can put your mind around it, what exactly is happening, with the full Venus being the outside, which makes the pentagram, and the superior conjunction when the evening star begins. And then on the other side, this will be the new Venus, which will occur later in this year. I think it's 24th of October, 2026 in Scorpio. Also interesting were the Sabian symbols. I looked into that as well. 18 degrees was where we're coming from. And that's Sabian symbol 19. I think it was a little boy carrying bags of groceries, like overwhelmed with all these things that he's trying to carry. And then 16 is 17 Sabian symbol. And that was a woman bathing in the nude or something like that, like a nudist. She was becoming a nudist and fine with being nude. I don't know. I should really have it up so I can tell you exactly what it says. But just the concept of not being ashamed of herself or her body, going from this young boy with too much to handle to being completely just in your natural environment, just being with nothing. That's kind of an interesting concept to think of, that we're shedding ourselves, shedding our skins, shedding our clothes, just like Inanna, which is related to this Venus cycle as well. It's just kind of amazing to really deeply go into these designs that are made in the sky. It reminds me of the spirograph, if you remember that as a kid, having a spirograph. And that is a really good visual to understand how planets move in the sky and make these patterns. If they had a trail behind them, we'd see it all. All right. I like you just the way you are. I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon.